Jack Brokaw, and from locally, Broomfield. I was born in Tapan, New York, and near Manhattan, and spent a lot of time down in the Baltimore area as a little kid in Washington, D.C. And then my father, working for IBM, he got a job at machine accounting department manager in Manhattan, New York for IBM. And so we moved up there, and I went to junior high school up there. My mother was a newspaper reporter for Christian Science Monitor, one of the few ladies back in the old days that was able to do that. One of the things she was very proud of was that she was the only woman that was allowed to go up in the Empire State Building when they opened it to report about that. In high school, I had a counselor who said, we need to decide what you're going to do from here on out. You know, we ought to talk about some things. He says, you're good in art and science and math. And he says, let me think about that. And so I came back about a week later, and he says, you ever heard of architecture? And I said, no, not really. And he said, well, think about it and look into it a little bit, which I did. And in those days, that was the Sputnik era. And the President of the United States wanted all the boys to go into engineering. So I decided, well, architectural engineering. So we looked around and we found that Penn State had a course, RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic, had a course, and Colorado University. Now, my family's all New York. And they said, Colorado University, all that is cattle and Indians and stuff like that. Why would you ever want to go out there? And I said, well, I don't particularly want to go out there necessarily, but they gave me the best money, scholarship money. So at 17, I flew a DC-3 to Chicago, and then took the Denver Zephyr into Denver. And I got out at Union Station, and I went out the front door, and I looked around. I said, you know, to the cab driver sitting out front, I said, is this Denver? And he said, it's the Queen City of the Plains. And I said, well, it doesn't have any big buildings. He said, well, yeah, Medina Tower, that's the tallest one in town. And I was 17 years old. I mean, but parents just turned me loose, and I guess they thought I could make it. And anyway, he stopped at the top of Davidson Mesa, and he said, see those buildings down there with red roofs? I said, yeah. And he said, that's the University of Colorado. I said, well, there aren't many buildings down there. There weren't many buildings in town either. But coming from Long Island and seeing the setting, it was unbelievable. Charles Hertling was a teacher of mine, and I liked him a lot. He squared me away. When I got here, I knew how to draw. And in my class, and the people didn't know how to draw. I said, well, how can you be in the School of Architecture and not know how to draw? Well, Chuck said, shut up, just, help them, And if you don't help them, I'll give you an F in this class. So I had to get humble and help the people and this kind of thing, which was good for me. Cal Briggs, professor there, and Dev Carlson. Cal Briggs looked at my work. He was my design instructor in the sophomore year. And he said, Jack, he said, you don't want to be in architectural engineering. You want to be in architecture, because you don't want to get in all those boring classes and do all that engineering kind of stuff. You want to design buildings. So he got me on that track. Anyway, when I graduated, I worked for Charles Hertling, and he was a very unique architect in doing homes in Boulder and doing wild and wonderful things there. And he really didn't know how to detail or
Mm-hmm.
get buildings built or anything. And he'd just turn this stuff over to me, and he'd say, just draw it up, get it built, this kind of thing. And some of them were, the first one I remember was a couple round buildings for Professor Jesser in South Boulder. And he said, well, think about what it would be if you were the builder, how you would need to give him dimensions and show him how to do things, and just draw it up. So I did. Went from there to Nixon and Jones, and that was fun. They were doing more commercial work, this kind of thing, and I was very proud to work on the Fremont County Courthouse in Canyon City with them. They were a young firm, and they were able to get that work from the county commissioners as long as they would have an office in the old courthouse. So we'd go down there and spend the week down there and do the drawings, get the buildings built, and that kind of stuff. When I got my license in 4 years, in '62, then I went out on my own with Dick Brown, who was a student with me at the university and also had been at Nixon and Jones. He was technically oriented. So you had a designer, and then you had a technical guy. And we went out, he had property up in Sunshine Canyon. So we went on his property, and we built this small studio overlooking the canyon and Boulder below, and would sit outside with our drafting board and under canopy and this kind of thing, and draw houses, what you do when you're young. And so we did several houses and got that going. And then we did some church work. We got together with Bill Bowen, that's right, Bill Bowen. And he was from Oklahoma University, studied under Bruce Goff, and so and he had land up in Sunshine Canyon also, so he designed a round building. I always wanted to do something round like that. So he designed that, a real tour de force for a house in Sunshine Canyon. And I got land up there in Sunshine Canyon and higher up, and looked down over Boulder on this property, and I was able to get the property pretty economically because a fraternity brother of mine, who's a water lawyer, his father's grandfather, his father's father, homesteaded Sunshine Canyon. So they ran cattle up there. Well, it started getting too expensive to run cattle up there. The taxes were too high. So they said, well, we need to subdivide this. So John and I subdivided it. So I was able to get 5 acres up there over the hill from the high wind and design a house. So Dick Brown's house we designed and built, and Bill Bowen's house designed and built. My house designed and built. Tom Nixon got land up in Boulder Heights. We designed and built his home. So the 4 of us worked together. We started working all over the state. And we did schools and we did rec centers all over the state for years and years, starting in '67 when Nixon, Brown, Brokaw, Bowen. So that's what we did with schools. We started with Cotopaxi, in addition to Cotopaxi High School. The school board knew us from doing the courthouse down the street down the canyon in Canyon City, and trusted us to, even young people, to go ahead and do a school for them. That got us going in schools, got me really interested in schools, because I figured that I wanted to do something good as an architect, something good for society. So doing something for kids, nice environment for teaching and learning and this kind of thing, was a goal of mine. So I stayed with that. And we worked for 26 school districts in the state of Colorado. We did about 130 school projects and this kind of thing over the years. A lot of work. And we were doing work in Rangeley and Lyman and Last Chance and all over the state. And Front Range, being young people, you really couldn't get in the door too much in Denver and this kind of thing. early on, till you proved yourself. One of the really fun projects in the school business was we did Lake County Intermediate School and Recreation Facility for Leadville. Okay. Well, you know, when you get out of the Front Range, the people aren't as sophisticated. So they really need a lot of help. Superintendent of schools up there at the time, he was an old lineman from Nebraska, football. And he was a tough guy, and but he loved education, and this is what he was going to do. I got on the good side. We have lunch and this kind of thing, and you know, I'm 35 or something, and he says, we got to do this new school, and we've got to talk to the teachers, see what they need, talk to the community, and see how they would like to do this and get a bond issue passed, and on and on. And so funny, they wanted to do business at the Lions Club. They didn't want to do it in their office room. It was funny, laying out drawings and this kind of thing at the Lions Club in the bar. Anyway, that's the way it was up there, and we built a model of what it might look like, a educational wing of the building, and we set up furniture and this kind of stuff. So that was going into the community, going into the homes, talking with the people, getting them excited, and having a bond issue, and it passed, and they were out in the streets celebrating, and you know, minors tend to drink a little bit, and we had a blast up there working on that project, and that was one of the first things that I felt that was really a lot of fun doing, and working on something where you get so much respect, but it's scary. As a young architect, suppose you blow it in this community, it's a lot of money for them. So when we're doing these and driving all over the state, we said, you know, that it would be a lot cheaper, not cheaper, but a lot better of our time if we got airplanes. So that's what we did. First we started with a single, and then we got a twin because we wanted to go over the mountainside. And when you look down at the top of the mountains in a single, there's no place to land up there. So if the engine cuts out, you've had it. But in a twin, it was supercharged and sixth place, and on one engine it could maintain the altitude and this kind of stuff. It was scary to have mechanics that weren't your own people and didn't want to keep you alive because of their well-being in terms of job. So we got Boulder Aviation, and we started that up. And so we were working on people's planes at Boulder Airport and this kind of stuff. And we got interested in rebuilding some airplanes. Our chief mechanic was the FAA inspector, and he said, I know this plane in a Stearman, twin training Stearman out here in Kansas, and we brought it back, and on the weekends we rebuilt it and would fly it in to Blakesburg, Iowa in the summertime, and with your helmet on and sitting on the parachute and driving the roads. And that's why they had the names of the towns on top of the buildings and this kind of thing. So that was kind of just fun. It was difficult in the late 80s, kind of like it is now in terms of work available. And we were not getting into computers and technology. We were doing hand drawing, and really didn't want to get into all that funky stuff like that. I mean, we were losing work in the recreation facilities and also in schools to John Rogers and people like that, and Johnny Anderson, et cetera. And where we were doing well against them before, we started losing work to them because they were going up with their technology and doing the right thing with their businesses, and we weren't. So we shut down in '90, and Brian Klipp, who had worked for me, he went to CU, worked for me in the summertime as a student who had a nice business going in Denver. So he and I talked, and I said, well, I'd like to stay in schools, and you need public work. You're only doing private work. He was doing some Kaiser Permanente types of things too. So we got together, working with a Michael Graves on the library, and star architects and things like that. Fine. Get him out on the golf course, and he's a human being. When I first got to know him, when we got the project for he was pretty egotistical. I brought him in, and he came to talk to the architects about architecture and this kind of stuff. And so I got to know him at dinner and that kind of thing. Then he decided, when he was in his 50s, to take up golf. He's traveling the world all the time, and he's around these great golf courses. He takes it up, he gets very, very interested in it. So when he comes out here, for example, when he became Architect of the Year, or whatever that's called for FAIA, or Architect, Gold Medal. We had a party for him, and we all, Brian Klipp and another guy and I took him out on the golf course. And when he goes out on the golf tee, nobody cares. What's his swing look like? He's got a decent little swing and stuff like that. But nobody cares who he is. And he realized that, this is great. And he would hit balls and curse and become a human being and, just be an ordinary guy. And it really helped him a lot as a human being. So I thought that was a wonderful thing. That's a little story about a star architect. I had never done anything on a national scale, like a Phil Giroux or somebody like that, and really didn't feel like I was worthy. All my work had been, I was president of North Chapter, I was president of AIA Colorado, I was the co-chair of the 2001 host chapter for the National Convention when it was here, but I served locally. As I look at, I've been writing letters of recommendation for people, this kind of thing, over the years on a national scale and local scale, and seeing what they have to go through and have to say how wonderful and gorgeous they are and all the good things they've done. It's just not my character. So I really was not interested in going through that Hell Week kind of thing. You take a Marv Sparn. He's done national things. Like Phil Giroux has done national things. And those kind of people are deserving to be, I think, fellows, and should be. And it should be more automatic for them. You put in your paper, say, oh, da, 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 and they say, you don't have to convince them too much, like you do other people. Yeah. Well, if they really are interested in doing wonderful things for people, people are in buildings all the time. They live in them, they work in them, they recreate in them. Why shouldn't they have? Why shouldn't they have the best? And if you feel like you want to do something for society, architecture is great for that. I still go into the office 4 times a week. Been basically retired for 4 years, but I go in there and I do market research to make sure that we all know what cities are doing, corporations, school districts, counties, etc., so that we can get ahead of the other firms by touching base with people, the right people, and getting a leg up. So that's what I do now, and I get a kick out of going in there. But it's been very rewarding for me.